A man exploring a forgotten stretch of African wilderness stumbles upon a massive male lion, starving, blind, and barely clinging to life after surviving alone for 2 years. What he discovers next will challenge everything we know about animal resilience, loyalty, and fate. The morning sun had barely risen when Daniel locked the last buckle of his backpack and stepped into the rust-colored savannah. He wasn't here for adventure, nor for photography, at least, not today. He had come searching for something far more elusive, signs of an animal population that locals insisted had vanished years ago. The air was still, unnaturally still, as if the land itself were holding its breath. No antelope leaped across the tall grass. No birds circled overhead. Even the wind, usually restless in these parts, whispered only in short, uneasy breaths. Daniel felt it immediately. This place carried a strange silence, a silence that didn't belong in the African wild. His boots pressed into the dry earth, revealing scattered tracks that seemed to start and end abruptly, like half-written stories abandoned mid-sentence. He bent down, touching one of them. A paw print, large, deep, but aged. Weeks old, maybe months. The deeper he went, the stronger that unsettling feeling grew. Something out here was wrong. Terribly wrong. Then from somewhere beyond the thorn bushes, he heard it, a faint, trembling sound. Not quite a roar. Not quite a cry. Something was suffering. Daniel pushed through the thorny brush, following the trembling sound as it rose and fell like a fading heartbeat. With every step, the smell of dust and decay thickened in the air. Finally, the bushes opened into a small clearing, and that's when he saw it. A lion. Or rather, the remains of what a lion used to be. The massive creature lay curled beside a cracked waterhole, his once golden mane now dull and tangled. His ribs pressed sharply against his skin, each breath a shallow, painful rise. Flies circled the open wounds along his flank, and his tail twitched weakly, barely brushing the dry soil beneath him. But what struck Daniel the hardest wasn't the lion's condition, it was his eyes. Clouded, empty, unseeing. The lion was completely blind. Daniel's breath caught. How could a blind lion survive even a day in the wild, let alone this long? He scanned the ground quickly, old bones bleached by the sun, patches of flattened grass, claw marks near a collapsed den. Clues whispered a brutal story. This animal had been living here alone for nearly 2 years. The lion lifted his head at Daniel's scent, but not in warning. Instead, he let out a soft, broken groan, as if begging for a mercy he no longer believed existed. And then, with a final tremble, the lion's legs buckled and he collapsed into the dust. For several seconds, Daniel just stood there, frozen, staring at the lifeless heap of fur in front of him. Logic screamed at him to step back. This was still a fully grown lion, a predator capable of ending a man in seconds. But reason alone couldn't overpower what he saw, a creature stripped of all strength, hanging by the thinnest thread of life. Daniel slowly slipped his backpack off and knelt beside the lion, careful not to startle him. "Easy, easy," he whispered, though he knew the lion couldn't see him. He pulled out a small canteen, unscrewed the cap, and extended it toward the lion's cracked lips. For a moment, there was nothing. Then weakly, the lion's tongue flicked forward, touching the metal rim. He drank, slowly, painfully, desperately. Daniel felt something shift in his chest. A connection. A silent plea. He offered bits of dried meat next. The lion hesitated, sniffed the air, then gently grazed Daniel's hand as he tried to chew. It was clear, trust did not come easy, but hunger left no choice. The sun dipped lower, shadows stretching across the land. From somewhere in the distance came the chilling whoops of hyenas, dozens of them. Daniel's heart hammered. The lion, in this condition, wouldn't survive a single attack. Night approached fast, and with it, danger. He looked at the lion, then at the darkening horizon. Leaving wasn't an option anymore. Daniel tightened his grip on his flashlight and whispered, "I'm staying with you, whatever happens." The fight for survival had begun. As darkness settled over the clearing, Daniel sat beside the lion, their breaths sinking in the cold night air. With every shudder the lion made, Daniel couldn't help wondering how a king of the savannah had fallen so far. And slowly, the clues around him began forming a story, one carved in scars, silence, and survival. This lion had once been powerful. His frame, even in its weakened state, proved that. But the deep slashes across his face told of a violent battle, likely with a rival male. One blow, perhaps from a claw or a horn, must have shattered his vision. Blindness in the wild was a death sentence. Yet he didn't die. Daniel imagined the lion learning to navigate the world through sound and scent, listening for footsteps, tracking the rustle of small prey, drinking from waterholes only when the land fell silent. He imagined him waking alone each morning, fighting hunger, fighting fear, fighting the night. And the worst part, abandonment. Lions live in prides, but a blind, wounded male offered no strength, no protection. He had been left behind. A soft, rattled breath pulled Daniel back to the present. The lion's chest rose unevenly, each inhale weaker than the last. If help didn't come soon, he wouldn't see another sunrise, blind or not. Daniel's hands trembled as he dialed the nearest wildlife rescue line, praying the weak signal would hold. Every second the phone rang felt like another second stolen from the lion's already fading life. Finally, a voice. Daniel spoke fast, explaining the lion's condition, the blindness, the dehydration, the imminent danger. The operator hesitated. Rescue missions for full-grown males were complicated, risky. But hearing Daniel's urgency, she agreed to dispatch a team. Hours crawled by. When the rescue truck finally arrived at dawn, Daniel felt relief wash over him like rain on dry earth. The team approached carefully, tranquilizing the lion with a gentle dose before lifting him onto the stretcher. Even sedated, his body felt impossibly light. Years of struggle had stripped him to bone. At the wildlife facility, veterinarians surrounded him instantly. Tests revealed something astonishing. Though blinded, his eyes could still respond faintly to light. He wasn't beyond saving. Days passed. With proper food, medicine, and care, the lion began to regain weight. His breathing steadied. He lifted his head more often, reacting to familiar sounds around him, especially Daniel's voice. And then came the moment no one expected. The blind lion, once dying, once alone, started following Daniel's footsteps, trusting him more than anyone else in the sanctuary. A bond was forming, one that defied nature itself. Months later, Daniel returned to the sanctuary, unsure if the lion he had saved would even remember him. The once starving creature was now strong, his coat fuller, his steps confident despite the blindness. As Daniel approached the enclosure, the lion paused, lifting his head to the breeze. Then, slowly, unmistakably, he walked toward the fence, guided only by Daniel's scent and voice. When he reached him, the great lion pressed his forehead gently against Daniel's hand, rumbling a soft, grateful purr. The king had risen again, and against all odds, he remembered the man who refused to leave him behind.